So hello everyone, thank you for your participation. And this is a webinar titled the 2024 Declaration of Helsinki, Taking Forward Bioethics and Human Rights. And this is today's program. First, there is a welcome remarks from the representatives of organizers. First, Dr. Barbara Barroso, who is a president of the International Federation of Associations of Pharmaceutical Physicians and Pharmaceutical Medicine, IFAP. And then Professor Elda Bushinga, who is a full professor at the Faculty of Law of Vitória in Brazil. She is the president of the Brazilian Society of Bioethics. It seems that there is some connection error, and she may bring welcome afterward. And Professor Disiu Greco, who is a Professor Emeritus of Infectious Diseases and Bioethics at the School of Medicine, Federal University of Minas Gerais, Brazil. And he's a member of the UNESCO International Bioethics Committee and associate member of the WMA, and he is the past president of the Brazilian Society of Bioethics. And then I will make a presentation and to introduce my participation in WMA's meeting in Washington, D.C. And then Dr. Barbara Barroso will have a presentation on collaboration with the WMA and IFAP's perspectives. And then Professor Ames Dai, she is a founder of the Steve Biko Center for Bioethics in South Africa, and she is a past chairperson of the UNESCO International Bioethics Committee. And she talked about access and equity in research, justice, vulnerability, and low resource settings. And we will have 5 to 10 minutes. And then Professor Diego Zenera, a professor of bioethics at University Francis Cana in Brazil, and he is a member of the board of Brazilian Society of Bioethics. He speaks about perspectives from Brazilian Society of Bioethics on the Declaration of Helsinki. And then Professor Disiu Greco talk about ethics of placebo-controlled trials and post-trial access, Brazilian experience. And there are special comments from Dr. Peter Lurie, Center for Science in the Public Interest, and Dr. Sarai Kestra, and National Committee for Universities Allied for Essential Medicines, Netherlands, and discussions and closing remarks from the representative of organizers. So thank you very much. So I would like to request for the organizers a welcome remarks. So first from Dr. Barbara Barroso, president of the IFA. So Barbara, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Chieko. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all at today's webinar, and thank you for your presence, which will definitely enrich our perspectives and discourse. I would like to express my special thanks to the organizing committee and to my colleague Chieko for her great efforts. And I owe a big thank you to all the distinguished speakers, and I wish also to thank each and every participant. This webinar is very important. It is the second one out of the series of August, and the topic, of course, is so contemporary and important with regard to the ongoing revision of the Declaration of Helsinki. And I feel that all of us, we have a task to contribute our input, because there is a potential for actionable influence on the ongoing discussion. So actionable change is a possibility, and therefore I invite everyone to be vocal, and the input will be very much appreciated. So this is a valuable moment, and without further ado, I am inviting everyone to stimulate the dialogue and the debate and to inspire each other, so we manage to have some great conclusion remarks and proposals. Thank you for the invitation, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for your very warm regard for every participant. So next, Professor Elda Bushinga already arrived, and can you unmute?
Elda, você pode
It's possible. Hello. So please.
I'm going to translate for her, okay, Chico? She's going to speak in Portuguese, and there will be a simultaneous translation by her friend, myself.
Olá, bom dia, boa noite a todos e a todas. Espero que vocês recebam o meu abraço aqui do Brasil. Eu tenho uma imensa satisfação com esse evento, a participação da Sociedade Brasileira de Bioética nesse evento, especialmente considerando a importância do tema que nos reúne aqui. Eu queria cumprimentar.
Let me start, because it's going to be too long.
Okay.
She says she is coming, she's giving you all a big hug from Brazil, and she's very pleased to be together with the Brazilian Society of Bioethics, especially in a subject that's so dear to all of us. Okay.
Eu gostaria de cumprimentar a doutora Tcheco, dizer a ela da minha admiração pela organização, pela forma tão competente, precisa, objetiva com que conduziu a organização desse evento, juntamente com o professor Dirceu Greco, que estava representando a Sociedade Brasileira de Bioética. Receba nossos cumprimentos e nossa alegria. Acho que vivemos um tempo bastante difícil em todas as partes do mundo, na qual os direitos fundamentais vêm sendo atacados em razão da ascensão da extrema-direita, não apenas no Brasil, mas em muitos países do mundo.
Tá bom. Chico, she says she is sending you the best regards for your organization, for the meeting. She says that you helped by myself representing the Brazilian Society of Bioethics. So she's very happy again to be in this position now, because she represents completely the Brazilian Society of Bioethics. And she's saying that this time in the whole world, we are facing the rise of the far right, and that's a problem because we may lose a lot of the things that we have won in relation to human rights and bioethics.
Este evento, ele, no meu entendimento, tem uma representação muito importante de que é a força das parcerias, a força das instituições que se reúnem em todas as partes do mundo, e aqui, nesse momento, Brasil e Japão, para que nós possamos nos organizar, para que nós possamos nos entrelaçar de forma a resistirmos a todas as tentativas de violações na ética em pesquisa que estamos vivendo no mundo, no Brasil especialmente, com a situação a que chegamos nas últimas decisões legislativas.
She says that it's a pleasure, it's very important that all the people that are here can join together. We, the organizers from Brazil and from Japan, but everyone that's present, we have now 26 people participating. We have a very strong reason to be here because we together can counteract against all the things that have been happening in many countries. Brazil is facing a lot of difficulties, even with a new president, with the elections that are coming now, and the far right is planning to be there to maybe change a lot of things that we have been winning the last few years. I think it's happening many countries in the world. So being together, we have this opportunity to do something to change that, especially in human rights, of course, and in the bioethics, bioethics related to research involving human beings.
A Sociedade Brasileira de Bioética, então, manifesta mais uma vez a sua satisfação com essa parceria, doutora Checo, e gostaria de registrar que nós estamos unidos, irmanados neste projeto de defesa dos direitos fundamentais, de defesa da democracia, de defesa da ética em pesquisa, e que nós juntos certamente lutaremos, empreenderemos forças no sentido de que não haja perdas significativas e que nós tenhamos avanços em qualquer mudança que se queira, que se deseje, que se empreende fazer em declarações de defesa dos direitos humanos, em defesa da vida e em defesa de uma sociedade ética, de uma sociedade plural, de uma sociedade que queira e que deseje o avanço científico, mas que saiba que ele tem limites e que é preciso que nós arquemos nesta busca pelo desenvolvimento com respeito à dignidade da pessoa humana. Eu agradeço já imediatamente, me despeço, estarei acompanhando todo o evento e, mais uma vez, peço ao professor Dirceu, que me socorreu neste momento, em razão de uma pronúncia que poderia, talvez, comprometer o meu pensamento, agradeço a ele por esta tradução e, mais uma vez, a professora Checo, doutora Checo, e a todos os presentes. Um abraço da Sociedade Brasileira de Bioética.
She emphasized what she said in the beginning, that's very important that we are together again, facing all the challenges that we are facing throughout the world, and knowing that for the scientific advancement, it cannot happen without respecting human rights and human dignity. So that's the main reason for us to be here together. And she said that, of course, the Brazilian Society of Bioethics is together. We will be here with you. That's her words, and I like that very much. We have been together for a long time and fighting that any changes that may happen in any document, we can try to make the changes, but if not, we'll be together to face it, saying that we have to make it better. So she gives her goodbye, saying that she preferred to speak in Portuguese because, of course, she speaks English, but she thought that would be much faster and with much more intensity. She is very intense. It's not a translation, I'm saying that. Her intensity, the mother language was better. So he wishes all of us a successful meeting and hoping that we can do much more together. Thank you.
Um abraço.
Thank you very much. So thank you indeed for your passionate remarks. So Professor Greco, do you have something else, additional comment as our opening remarks?
Yes, I think so. I think I should not speak more because I think Elder said everything maybe that I would say, but what I like to say to everyone that's here is, my name is Dirceu Greco, as you mentioned. I'm talking from Belo Horizonte, Brazil, where Chieko had been for 2 days, a few months ago. And I'm very honored to share the coordination of the second day of our webinar with my good friend Chieko and the people from Japan that were very important, like Takeo. It's a very good friendship that we have been constructing the last 5 years. And Chieko and Takeo are very important in organizing and putting together these webinars. Today, you have seen, I have the honor of sharing the welcome remarks with Elda, who is the president of the Brazilian Society, and with Barbara, president of the International Federation of Associations of Pharmaceutical Physicians and Pharmaceutical Medicine. As you know, from the distributed program, in this event is organized by many important entities. I'm not going to name them because it's written in the program. And just to end it, it's going to be a remark that I want to say. We are meeting in a very special situation. As WMA General Assembly is only 2 months away, and we'll discuss and approve the new version of the Declaration of Helsinki. This General Assembly will be held in Helsinki from 16 to 19 of October. I must emphasize that the Declaration of Helsinki, which was first approved in 1964, is commemorating its 60th anniversary, and is undoubtedly an important and globally respected document on the ethics of human research. For this reason, it's essential that its guidelines reflect the need for unequivocal support for human rights in general and the protection of research participants in particular. I thank the speakers and all those registered, and wish us all very productive and comprehensive debate on topics that are very dear to all of us. Without further ado, I give the floor to Chieko Kuhiara for her talk. Thanks very much.
So thank you very much for very much valuable remarks from all the representatives or organizers. So next, I would like to talk about I'd like to make the sharing. So I would like to talk about my participation in WMA's regional meeting very recently, that is August 15 and 16. And that is in Washington, D.C. And my talk is for taking forward bioethics and human rights. This is the objective of this webinar. And for maximizing the impact of the new DOH, which is the objective of my session as a WMA's meeting. So first about the meeting with Peter Lurie, today's guest in Washington, D.C. Today, we invited Peter as a guest commentator. We met at the venue of the WMA meeting in Washington, D.C., although he did not attend the WMA meeting. I wish to introduce his achievement as background of placebo debate. Just a bit about the historical issue. During HIV/AIDS pandemic, Professor Greco took a role of principal investigator of vaccine trial, and there is a good example of a community engagement to improve study protocol while negative image of mass media against human experimentation. He has been also engaged in governmental HIV program as well as clinical practice. One big event was establishment of the best proven intervention to prevent prenatal transmission. After the establishment of the best proven intervention in 1997, Peter opened the international debates on injustice of placebo-controlled trials sponsored by developed countries and performed in developing countries, which could not be performed in rich countries. In 2005, his paper with Greco criticized the FDA to abandon the requirement for adhering the DOH for clinical trials outside the US, replacing it with the ICH GCP. This is my rapid response to the BMJ paper expressing objection to the DOH 2002 note of clarification to permit high-risk placebo-controlled trials, which is as if guidance for industry. Such text in DOH is still now continuing. We also discussed injustice of placebo studies and importance of post-trial access during the COVID-19 pandemic. This led to the proceedings and Springer book publications. This book was edited by myself and Professor Greco and Professor Dai, today's panelists, and also IFA participated, and other many authors are very much appreciate. So, what is the acceptable risk of placebo-controlled trial when there is a proven intervention? There is a discrepancy between DOH and COMS. Who is accountable? DOH states no increase of risk of serious or irreversible harm. COMS states minor increase above minimum risk. Between these, there are some risks of continuing pain, burden, but not serious. It means regulatory definition of hospital admission and not irreversible. This is acceptable for DOH, but not acceptable for COMS. So next, about the brief introduction of the WMA meeting in Washington, D.C. There are some topics discussed here. So just about the important, impressive discussions. There was unanimous voices supporting inclusiveness of vulnerable people. Social value was once included but deleted. Still now, it does not come back. It was surprising that all the US government representatives, FDA, OHRP, NIH, CDC, argued to deregulate the DOH core principle to prioritize patient interest to goal of research, not connect to Type A declaration, and disregard post-trial access. Korean bioethicist and I expressed objections and defended these core principles of the DOH. The last session was for maximizing impact of the new DOH, where I argued the importance of these principles. So next, I introduce my session in WMA meeting, focusing on my talk as I cannot represent others. The session was, the moderator was current president of the WMA. Speakers are Secretary General of the WMA, immediate past president of the COMS, who are working group chair of the research guidelines, and representative from patient organizations. And I represented IFAP, but talked a personal opinion. I introduced discussions on the DOH and the Springer book in which patient and the public expressed their opinions on the DOH. The book got a lot of readers worldwide, and we are planning next book to discuss on the new DOH. I argued in the WMA meeting that this book could maximize the impact of the new DOH, including debates during the revision process, which will improve the actual practice of clinical research. The question is whether the DOH is highest ethical standard or a minimum requirement. This table shows how key concepts are missing in the proposal draft. Most of these items are in COMS. Opinions from patient group, IFAP, Japanese guidelines already incorporated many of these items, but missing in the new DOH. It is surprising because Japanese people believe that the DOH is #1. So there is a space for Brazil. So Professor Greco will fill this space and later in his slide presentation. And every one of the participants can fill this space according to your country's regulation. So this is my proposal at the end of my talk at the WMA meeting. First, missing items in table 1 should be filled according to COMS. Second, placebo-controlled trial risk should be minimized according to COMS. Serious or irreversible harm, such terminology as guidance for industry should be deleted. For patient, it is not possible to understand. It is not for Declaration of Helsinki, it's ethical principle. Third, post-trial access should be assured for all who need it. The proposal draft states exceptional case must be approved by ethics committee. Such kind of excuse is not necessary, should be deleted. Post-trial access should be assured for study participant, trial host community, and finally, those most in need worldwide. So lastly, actions for future. So continuing expression of objections and clarifying missing items in respectful manner would be important for the improvement of the impact of the new DOH. Continuing collaboration with the WMA to fill the missing items and caring for contested opinions would contribute to better protection of research participants. It would be achieved by publications of books, papers, webinars, in-person meetings, actual research practice, ethics committee review. So let's start preparation for the next 10 years. The new DOH will be adopted as the General Assembly of the WMA in October. Some of us will have a web or an in-person meeting, so we wish you to join. So thank you for your attention. So hope that you visit these websites to upload continuous discussions. Thank you very much. So thank you very much. So there is not enough time. So next speaker is Barbara. And Barbara is IFA president. She has some common perspective with me. So I'd like to pass to the Barbara to make us presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diego, for your great presentation and introduction. As always, very meticulous and to the point. And I will try to complement with my thoughts and experience. I will also share some personal views, of course, data from the literature and our work within IFAB. So I feel that what we are doing today and all months before is a very responsible work. And I appreciate all our members of the ethics working group for contributing to our community efforts. I am a physician by training, and as mentioned, I am the president of IFAB. I am also a member of the Executive Committee of Science, and I collaborate with academia in Greece, where I am responsible for a number of master courses. And I am also an alumni of the Greek Stavros Niarchos Bioethics Academy. In addition, I am a member also of the ethics working group. So in a way, although I state I have no conflict of interest, I am still part of the ethics working group, but it is a positive thing to be within the group and to be also at the executive board. I hope that I will share data or views that could be helpful for the discussion. And I will, first of all, like to mention what I expect from the Declaration of Helsinki as an MD and previous clinical investigator. I wish this new version to be clearer and stronger to protect human participants. I wish to see benefits and risks to be shared equitably. I would like to see more care and interest about the vulnerable patients, and of course for the poor, low middle income countries with poor resources. I also have a modern expectation that relates to the current ethical challenges that are related with new technologies, artificial intelligence, and advanced genetic tools. And I hope that we will manage to overcome the placebo issue in the era of the accelerating artificial intelligence and genetic tools and inventions. I have also to say that WMA has introduced a number of opportunities for consultation. We tried not to miss the IFAP any opportunity. There was transparency in terms of public involvement and publishing the updates and having some information on their website. And we had at least the opportunity to be part of the consultations, and we took advantage of all public comment periods, and we tried to attend most of the regional meetings. And the perspective of global opening and collaboration is important. And we hope that all voices raised and proposals will be, even at the last moment, be heard. But I felt like recognizing the fact that we had the opportunity to contribute to and to participate in these periods. Now, lately, actually during summer, there were some very interesting and intriguing publications that were commenting on the Declaration of Helsinki that I believe sparked debates in the various countries. I'm sure you are aware, and the titles also are indicating the challenges that have to be resolved. Now, as IFAP, I have to share with you that as an organization, as an international organization, actually a federation of all pharmaceutical medicines associations, we are a purpose-driven organization. And we support, as you can understand, an ethical and innovative leadership along with the scientific leadership as things are accelerating so rapidly in the current era. Our primary value is to benefit our members, and we emphasize on our members because we really wish to empower them in terms of ethics and competencies so that they follow the highest professional standards, including ethical standards, and we try to be networked and connected with the important stakeholders in the field of medical research and R&D so that we are raising our views and our proposals, and we wish to keep and maintain an open dialogue, not only with our communities, but with external stakeholders. And for this reason, we have our IFAP Today journal, we have the IFAP LinkedIn, we upload all our activities on our website, and we are running webinar ethics, and we are inviting a lot of participation and discussion around ethics matters at our flagship event, which is the International Conference of Pharmacovigilance Medicine that will happen in Amsterdam in April of 2025, where we will definitely have a roundtable on the topic of the new revision of the Declaration of Helsinki. Now I would like to go quickly over the IFAP ethics journey, and I would like to share what do we do for ethics, what we actually have done so far in terms of input to the ongoing revision, and share with you what we will continue to do. In terms of internal rules, we have a code of conduct for all our members and the executive board. Of course, that it is part of the constitution of IFA. In addition, we have an ethics framework for our members, which are professionals in pharmaceutical medicine, mainly physicians, but of course, other health-related biomedical experts. On the external environment, of course, we try to present our ideas through public consultations, through peer review publications, and with opportunities we have to talk about ethics in our webinars. With regard to the ethics framework for our professionals and members of IFAP, we are at the moment having an intensive discussion about moving to a new edition, the third one, where we still need to streamline the priorities and the core principles that we will have to update or introduce for our members. With regard to our regular activities, you have heard a lot about them from Cieko. The ethics working group is the most active, prominent, and internationally involved working group. I personally am very proud for all members of the team. And it's a hard working group with monthly meetings, very constructive agendas, follow-up and peer review papers, big contribution to our own IFAP Today journal, very close collaboration and meetings with WMA, collaborative projects as the exceptional book of ethical innovation for global health, and more to come. And we are very close, connected with SciOps, and we are supporting working groups and particular works. A recent one was the research governance, and also we had also a big contribution to the real world data booklet that was published this summer. With WMA, we have a systematic collaboration. We have a memorandum of understanding, and the key aspect of it is that we collaborate on all projects of common concern. And WMA Declaration of Helsinki is a top priority for IFAP, as for, I believe, for WMA. And we have had a couple of sessions between us, and we started early. Back in 2022, when we had the session with WMA during our international congress, then we met with representatives of WMA in Amsterdam at our IFAP regional meeting. And of course, we didn't lose any opportunity to join the WMA meetings where IFAP was invited. You see that we have been Cieko at Tel Aviv, myself at Copenhagen, Cieko in WMA, and at Helsinki meeting, it will be Cieko, Koto, and myself, because we wish to convey a strong signal from IFAP side. I'm sharing the proof of the meetings and the publications related to the meetings in case you have the interest to explore. They refer to activities of 22 and 23. And here I present also the 12 proposal I made at Copenhagen last year with 12 items that we felt that should be updated or included in the revision that it is ongoing. Of course, we have not succeeded with all this, but we will continue to try. And as Tiago mentioned, we at IFAP do not have a hesitation, but we bring this question: are we aiming at the highest standard or at the minimum requirement? And I would like to respond to this question, not based on our opinion, which is going to be, of course, revealed and already mentioned by Tiago to some extent, but let's see what we have done for it. We have started early on in 2020 when we had a peer review paper where we proposed that we have to connect the Declaration of Helsinki with the Declaration of Taipei due to data-driven research and biobanks, that it is an eminent feature of medical research. Now, in 2024, in April, we published the Declaration of Helsinki, ethical norm in pursuit of common goals, and I will share what we are talking in this paper. And we have another article under final review at the moment that we hope it will be published before the in the next days or week, and there we discuss about vulnerability, social value, and the placebo and post-trial access. Now, in our paper of April, we are commenting and proposing the data-driven research, broad consent and dynamic consent, to assure participants' rights and individual patient data sharing, and to support open science and social value. We discussed the risk minimization in placebo-controlled trials and post-trial access with best proven intervention. And we wish to have a co-creation with stakeholders on future-oriented research frameworks. On the linking the declarations of Helsinki and Taipei, I think this is well known, and I commented that we need to sort this out, especially for secondary data use, and the linkage will be very helpful. At the latest submission, as I mentioned before, we try to raise the topic of the vulnerable study participants and promote diversity. We emphasize social value as a prerequisite for everyone, and especially for the vulnerable people. And we continue to debate and challenge the placebo-controlled trials. And of course, we think that an ethics reform to achieve social value and equitable global health is somehow obvious, common sense, I would say, because medical research has as a primary objective to improve human health. Now, I'm coming back to the placebo use in clinical trials, and I'm wondering myself, how can we still discuss about the placebo while we have so many alternatives that even the regulatory authorities are proposing so that we use active comparators? We have existing standards and we have best proven treatments. There are so many drugs today available that I cannot believe that there is nothing we can use as a reliable comparator, active comparator. In addition, we have new trial designs like adaptive trials. We can use historic controls or external controls by using real-world data. We can do non-inferiority studies. We can have add-on trials. We can have crossover trials. And we still insist on saying that we should not withhold patients from effective treatments. And currently, I wish to respond to the fact of how the Declaration of Helsinki are seen and received by the regulatory authorities. This paper was published in 2018, and it was based on a questionnaire done with international regulatory agencies, the big ones, including FDA, EMA, Japan, and Korea, and many other countries. And these regulatory authorities, they have seen Declaration of Helsinki as a minimum ethical standard. And the use of the most current effective treatment as the comparator is preferred to avoid abuse of placebo-controlled trials, ambiguity, and open to various interpretations. But in the recent times, we have so many scientific proofs and regulatory guidances giving us so many opportunities to work after 2021 with model-informed drug development and in silico trials. And we are in an era of artificial intelligence that has been accepted for medical devices in Europe, in US, for clinical trials and research and discovery of new medicines. And we have an EU Artificial Intelligence Act, and we are in an era where we have really to focus on other more important and challenging technologies that for which we have to ensure that we make them safe for patients' use. So if I can say that I can finalize the recommendations, I think our guide should be to have highest ethical standards, to go ahead with the best proven intervention in the world. And by personal experience, I can say that by reviewing the literature, I see that most of the active comparators in clinical trials may not even be the best, because for very prominent reasons. But these drugs that do not use the best proven intervention, they will be hindered by health technology assessment committees that will not reimburse their drugs. So we have so many reasons beyond science, beyond technology, and for affordability of medicines to go with the best proven intervention. And of course, post-trial access is something that we cannot emphasize more. It is important for study participants, for the community where the study is done, and it is necessary for all who are in need worldwide. So with this, I have to move on what we will do next. We will continue to act on our proposals based on our fundamental principles of ethics, autonomy, beneficence, and non-maleficence and justice. We believe that the ethics considerations are important determinants of research, study design, and execution, and therefore we will persist. In parallel, we have to introduce debates in the topics related to new genetic technologies, in genetic privacy and data security, in artificial intelligence in research and development, in equity and access to genetic therapies, to their pricing, and so on. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I will be available for questions and discussion whenever it is feasible, now or at the end of all presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara, for your very valuable presentation, involving some kind of your opinion on the current revision process of the Declaration of Helsinki. So at this moment, I would like to accept some opinion or a question. So Professor Greco, please.
It's just my hands clapping. Thank you,
Thank you.
Barbara.
So thank you. Is there any opinion on the question? So I'd like to confirm Barbara's about the placebo language of the Declaration of Helsinki. There are controversy. At least there's a discrepancy between COMS and the DOH. At this moment, I'm not sure whether there is a possibility of changing from the current language to the COMS language. But as a professional of clinical trial, whether or not you regard that if it changes to the COMS language, is there a possibility that to impede valuable research, or it is possible to change to COMS from your perspective of your experience of conducting or designing of the clinical trial? How is your opinion?
Thank you, Chieko, for the question. It is. I have a view on this. Let me first say that from discussions I had in Copenhagen, I understood that the WMA perspective is that they are producing a high-level principles document, so they do not see that their work is to be detailed. Therefore, they simply refer to principles. And then SciOMS is translating these principles into actionable guidelines that hopefully are adopted at a later stage by ICH and finally by regulatory authorities. And this is the pathway to implementation. This is one possibility. I think that if we wish to be practical, what I propose to my students and to my colleagues is to use these three documents synergistically. So they should follow the highest standard that exist in each of these three fundamental documents in real life. I think also that the regulatory authorities are screening and scrutinizing the protocols. So we have also a safety lever at the EMA, at least in Europe, where it seems that EMA is more strict or conservative versus FDA. And I strongly believe that the research ethics committees should do their proper job. And all in all, we can think that we are in a system that works synergistically. But with WMA, I have to share what I heard there, and I have to respect that they are the high-level principles organization that gives the direction, and the direction should be translated into guidelines and legal binding documents by regulators so that they are applied. However, given that Declaration of Helsinki is considered as the top principle organization on medical research and is respected by regulatory authorities, as they mentioned as well in the study that I have shown from 2018, I think we should also try to convey the message to the Declaration of Helsinki working group and WMA that their intervention will be critical worldwide for increasing the level of ethics in research.
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree with you that to say that we will use these documents in Declaration of Helsinki and the CIOMS together. But I also heard that WMA and the CIOMS people to say that DOA should be the highest ethical standard and not in detail, describe in detail. However, the placebo paragraph is too much detail. It's not a language of ethical principle. It's a very strange that they are saying that the OS should be highest ethical standard, but leave the placebo paragraph as it is. It is too much detail. Guidance for industry. So this is my argument, but it's not argue to you. But we should. I have to continuously tell the WMA this issue. So thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So Professor Greco, do you have some opinion?
Yeah, now I'm raising my hand. Yeah, it's a very complicated issue, and I think we have to discuss that much thoroughly, and probably we can do that before the meeting in Helsinki. The problem is that the Declaration of Helsinki is not a one document. It has been changing through the years, changing to be worse. If we go back to 2000, when they had a very good document that said everything about placebo and introduced post-trial access. After that, it has been changed to the worse. And then we have CIOMS. I had the opportunity of being in the working group with this document, and the placebo issue was a very contentious. We were 12 people discussing, and what can you do? I mean, none of these documents are binding, especially not the Declaration of Helsinki. And there's a solution. Maybe, I don't know if that's the way that Brazil decided in 2004, that our requirements do not follow the Declaration of Helsinki. It follows what was written in 2000. So we don't need to be expecting, and I don't expect anything getting better in this coming meeting in October, for many reasons. We have been trying to change. We sent a lot of proposals in the last 2 months, and none of them were included. And the worst of them, I think, is that they did not even mention social value. So maybe, Barbara, to discuss with our students, I think we have to put the bar very high. What's the real need for clinical trial? Has to have social value, has to respect people, have to have post-trial access, and the placebo. My opinion is that placebo should not be used, and I liked very much what your institution is proposing. That's the same as we do. There are many alternative designs. So maybe with that, we can keep respecting. I have a very strong respect for what the Declaration of Helsinki has been doing in the 60 years. But not this one now, not the thing that they have started changing, as Sherpo published about that, and I have published also, after 2003, when the notes of verification that just, watered down everything that we have won in 2000. Sorry for interrupting. I'm going to say that again when I'm presenting, but I think it's a discussion for all of us. What can we do as people, as participants, as research ethic participants, as researchers? Thanks, Shir. Back to you.
So thank you very much. So there should be many opinions, but we should also listen to the remaining lecturers' voices and then discussion again. So thank you very much, Barbara, for your very extensive analysis and good expression of your opinions. Thank you very much. So next, I'd like to, thank you. So next, I'd like to request Professor Dai to have your presentation. Please share your slide.
Thank you, Shirko. and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes, okay, perfect.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to stop my video because of bandwidth issues. Okay, so what I'd like to say is, as you can see from this presentation, I'm going to be talking on access and equity in research, looking at justice, vulnerability, and low resource settings. And what I've done is I've included all regions of the world because low resource settings do not just apply to low and middle income countries. In the midst of high income countries, we also find low resource settings. So this is just as a reminder to all of us. I'm trying to move okay. So I'll start off with a declaration. The South African Medical Association is a member of the World Medical Association Working Group on the revision of the Declaration of Helsinki. I am Vice Chair of the Board of the South African Medical Association. I will not be referring to the Declaration of Helsinki in my talk. And I think that Chieko has done an excellent job with regard to the various iterations that she's actually put through and the comparisons she's done with other leading instruments. And I'd like to state that the views presented here are my personal views, and they have nothing to do with WMA or with SAMA. Here you can see the outline of my talk, and here are my priority resources that will be using or referring to today. So let's just unpack equity in health and research. And I'm putting them together because they're very related. So when we look at health equity, it boils down to the fact that all are to have equal opportunities and equal resources to access health. And this is in line with the WHO 2018 definition of health equity. And to quote, it's the absence of avoidable or remediable differences amongst groups of people, whether those groups are defined socially, economically, demographically, or geographically. And this notion of health equity is based on the concept of social justice, whereby it's going to be ethically immoral and unjustifiable for us to have differences in access to health. So how does this then translate to research equity? Let's draw from that definition of health equity to look at a definition of research equity. And it basically boils down to all those that are affected by research or who can benefit from its outcomes are to have equal opportunities to contribute to it and to benefit from it. So research equity will then include those that are absent or silent in research, those that may be deliberately left out of research. And when you look at this, if we have research on everyone that requires help, which is all of us, research equity basically boils down to being an important means of addressing health equity. So in terms of the CIOM's 2016 guidelines, Guideline 3 is important in terms of the equitable distribution of benefits and burdens in the selection of individuals and groups of research participants in research. Now, what this then basically means is that there's no group or class of persons to have to bear more than their fair share of risks or burdens from research participation. Equitable distribution would basically allow for participants to be drawn from the qualifying population in geographical areas of study where the results can be applied. In addition, there's got to be no unfair discrimination with regard to inclusion and exclusion criteria. And this is based on various issues in terms of privilege, disadvantage, race, sex, etc. And when you look at this particular guidance point, it comes out very clear that if you have underrepresentation in research, health disparities will be perpetuated. And when we look at research benefits, the research benefits must be there to address the diverse needs across the different classes or groups of people. In terms of this guideline, it is unjust to selectively include disadvantaged individuals or groups. And this is because those that are already disadvantaged already have risks and burdens. And then if they are selectively included into research for the benefit of a privileged few, you're just going to expose them to risks and burdens even more than they already experiencing. They can be overused in research. They are most likely to be excluded from the research benefits, or they may have difficulty in accessing the research benefits, especially when we see that at times there isn't that commitment to post-trial access. So therefore, broader inclusion of different social groups will help ensure research is conducted in a socially and ethically acceptable manner. I want to look at guideline 1, which talks to scientific and social value and respect for rights, especially considering social value is no longer included in the revisions as explained by Checo. So why do we need social value? It's important that for the information that the study is going to be producing, because that information must be able to promote individual or public health. So, the research would have social value if the endpoints are related to clinical decision-making, and if clinicians, policymakers, and others are likely to alter their practice based on study findings. And it's only if the research has social value that we would be able to justify the associated risks, costs, and burdens of the research in that particular locale or setting. And it is disappointing that this has been left out. So guideline 2 is specific to research conducted in low resource settings. That's a SIOMS 2016 guidelines. And basically, these guidelines highlight that where there are low resources, there is going to be vulnerability to exploitation. They go hand in hand. And if we're going to be doing research in low resource settings, local social value must be created. There must be equitable benefit. They also highlight that the responsiveness of research to health needs and priorities is important to provide social value. And this is to the communities and populations. There's got to be a shared responsibility in terms of providing social value. This shared responsibility would be shared by sponsors, funders, researchers, governments, etc. There definitely has to be post-trial availability. And the best way to work out this post-trial availability, and that's not only on interventions developed, but also in terms of the knowledge that's been generated by the research, and that needs to be disseminated, whether it's a low-income setting or a high-income setting. This knowledge needs to be generated equitably as well. So it's best to engage with communities to find out how best to get this done. And if we actually conduct ourselves this way, we will counter this horrible notion of ethics dumping. So SIOMS then went further, and in 2021 published its consensus study on clinical research in resource-limited settings. It was specific now to resource-limited settings. Some of you that are present on the panel were part of this, and I was part of this group, this working group as well. So in terms of this guideline, it starts off clearly stating that the highest burden of preventable diseases globally is in lower and middle income countries. So it stresses that there is still the global health divide. And most research and development is focused on diseases in high income countries, still in today's day and age. And this is because there's so much infrastructure already available. This infrastructure is so costly as well, and not freely accessible in low income countries. You know, we have this sustainable development goals, and one of them is ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being for all with universal access to needed medicines and vaccines. But for us to reach these SDGs and to realize this SDG, we require good quality research to identify and address unmet need. And therefore, we need to have access to this type of research for all. We know that clinical research drives an advancement of healthcare. And if we don't have clinical research in low resource settings, you're going to find entire populations missing out on these advancements. These guidelines recognize that there are challenges, mostly regulatory and administrative challenges and impediments, but we should not use these impediments to sweep ethics under the carpet. And we need to actually develop strategies to overcome these impediments towards access and equity in research, and therefore access and equity in health care. Here you can see that while non-communicable diseases have started falling from 1990 down, quite remarkably, but it's still quite high. So there is still that divide between low and high income countries. And while we see that the majority of diseases are of the infectious type, we also see from this set of slides that even non-communicable diseases are prevalent in low-income countries, and we need research in non-communicable diseases in low-income countries as well. And as you can see from here, non-communicable diseases are almost the same in terms of prevalence as in high-income countries. So to improve public health, we need to have health research. We need to view it as a social responsibility. So a well-developed healthcare system offering substantial benefits for all its citizens is an absolutely essential part of social responsibility. Yes, we can implement a healthcare system, but this cannot be limited only to providing available therapies in line with best practice. It's got to include strategies and practical tools to improve healthcare so that unmet health needs are covered, and so that effective, safe, and evidence-based care is delivered. And such strategies must include the conduct of clinical studies with the aim of increasing the knowledge of health problems affecting the population, developing and evaluating medicines and health products that target these health problems, studying medicines in the local context, and optimizing their accessibility and use. Pragmatic disease management trials bring evidence on how to improve healthcare by comparing, for example, different approaches to disease management or different mechanisms to improve patient adherence to therapy to improve outcomes. It's very important also to ensure that we build trust, because there's a number of ethical guidelines and clinical regulations, and they keep on advancing. in terms of their guidance. And we all realize that clinical research in resource-limited settings is critically important. However, what is found is that oftentimes the aim and nature of such research are not well understood by local populations, and some continue to see research as exploitative, with researchers from high-income countries taking advantage of the low-cost and under-regulated environments of LMICs. And therefore, it's important to ensure that when one gets into these sites and one builds up collaborations, we start off with a foundation of these collaborations must be based on trust. It's important to include special and vulnerable populations. In the past, certain physiologically special populations or certain populations with medical and pathological problems were excluded from research. However, more recently, we've seen the movement from exclusion to inclusion of these populations. But I think we need to look beyond physiological differences, because there are other situations, many circumstances that can render research participants vulnerable, especially when we look at the poverty and the socio-economic situations in low-income settings. And while unnecessary research with vulnerable populations and persons should be avoided, it is a matter of basic justice that, like any other societal group, vulnerable persons should be included in research that is necessary to show how they can be treated with the medicine safely and effectively, including those populations and individuals in low-resource settings. Now, just to look at the UNESCO Declaration, Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights from 2005. So, and I serve on this, the International UNESCO Bioethics Society. Important there when they say, in applying and advancing scientific knowledge, medical practice, and associated technologies, human vulnerability must be taken into account. And, you know, people must be protected and their personal integrity respected. A very important principle in Article 13 is that of solidarity and cooperation. And if there was solidarity amongst human beings, and if there was international cooperation amongst the various role players, I don't think we would be having this discussion here with regard to access and equity in research and therefore in healthcare. When we look at Article 15 of UNESCO, sharing of benefits, and you look at the number of benefits that they bring up that could be shared, it is an issue of justice as well. And, you know, this is very similar to the SIOM's guidelines of 2016 when they look at benefit sharing as well. SIOM's also highlights the importance of avoiding exploitative research, especially when one has developed really positive partnerships between high-income and low-income countries. They remind us that even in such partnerships, exploitative and unethical research practices can occur. For example, you may have a study being conducted in a low-resource country to reduce costs, and this may fail to take into consideration if there is a need for such research there, if there are plans to make products and services available locally, or if there are conflicts of interest or other issues that may affect participant safety or the validity of the research findings. And I'm going to now talk to you about a controversial example that's been added into this, guideline booklet. And that's cervical cancer screening in India. It's happened some years ago, but it is just as relevant when we look at our placebo discussions. The international standard for early detection of precancerous lesions is periodic pap smears. That's cytology screening. It requires infrastructure that is not available in all low and middle income countries at that stage a few years ago and now as well. So 3 clinical trials were conducted in India with funding from the US and France to investigate the effectiveness of alternative screening methods. And these were primarily visual inspection with acetic acid in high-risk women from socially disadvantaged backgrounds. The study protocols were reviewed and approved by the local institutional research ethics committees in India. 2 studies were also approved by the International Agency for Research on Cancer, which is the specialized cancer agency of WHO. All participants were educated about cervical cancer and alternative screening methods and were informed where these were available outside the study. They were randomly assigned to receive either screening, that's 200,000 women, or standard of care under the government program in India, that is no screening, and this was approximately 140,000 women. 294 women from the screen group and 254 women from the control group, the placebo group, died of cervical cancer during the long-term follow-up. An American physician submitted a complaint about these studies to the US Government's Office of Human Research Protections, the OHRP, essentially stating that this research was pointless since the accepted standard of cervical cancer screening was already known, and that offering no screening to the woman in the control group resulted in the needless death of 254 women. The OHRP did investigate the study, but they only investigated the one that received US government funding because it had no jurisdiction over the other 2 studies. And it found gaps in the translated materials, informing study participants about available screening methods, as well as irregularities in research ethics committee functioning. And it requested corrective action. Of note, importantly, it did not, however, determine that the no screening control groups were unethical. And it can have lots of discussion on this, during the second session of this meeting. But during discussion and debate, there were some pertinent questions that came up, and it's important to look at the different perspectives. So the question, was there a need for a more locally feasible screening method in India? And hence the research? According to the researchers, yes. According to the complainant, no, because PAP screening is feasible anywhere that cervical screening is appropriate. Did the no screening control group expose participants to increased risks? According to the researchers, no, the participants received even more care than they would have outside the study. According to the complainant, yes, in a moral sense, since all women should be given access to PAP screening. And I just want to quote what he said. I do acknowledge that I have harbored for many years that I cared to count an evolving sense of anger in the face of what I have perceived as meaningless, unavoidable harm and death visited on desperately vulnerable women. Was withholding or delaying the screening methodologically necessary for the study? The researchers, yes, no methodological issues were raised in the protocol review. According to the complainant, no. IARC should have not approved the study protocols. And this was profoundly alarming that a WHO committee had actually approved this. Were the women informed of the benefits and risks of participating in the study? According to the researchers, yes, with some initial problems, and corrective actions were taken. And I'm going to quote what the researchers had said. Our studies were explained in the local language to all eligible women, and written informed consent was obtained from each participant. As experienced Indian scientists and clinicians, we find it misleading when someone implies that Indian women do not have the common sense and intelligence to understand and comprehend the study procedures, interventions, etc., etc. According to the complainant, no, they were not informed. And for him, he says, to suggest, as do the researchers, that Indian women would knowingly consent to be randomly assigned to more death instead of more life, is to suggest that Indian women are unimaginably stupid. To enroll and sustain the unscreened control groups in these US-funded studies required withholding critical information from all the study participants regarding the predictable health benefits of 1 to 4 rounds of cervical screening compared to no screening whatsoever. And on that note, I thank you for your attention. I'm prepared to take, happy to take questions, and I'm sure we could have much more discussion during the second half of this session.
Yeah, thank you very much for Professor Dai's very comprehensive, very educational lecture. So, and to provide the basis of these very important documents of research ethics. Thank you very much. So there will be some discussion after the latter half, but at this moment, is there any specific question or opinion? Is it okay? This kind of comparative study would be discussed more in the latter half of this session. So if there is no specific question or opinion, we would like to have some break. So I am sorry for such kind of very short break, but now it's 35. So we would like to start the second session. So the first speaker of the second session is Diego, who is represents some kind of perspective of Brazilian Society of Bioethics. So thank you very much. So please start your talk.
Thank you, Chieko. I would like to thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, sharing the views from Brazilian Society of Bioethics on research ethics. I changed a little bit my topic, but the connection with Declaration of Helsinki, it will be clear during my text. I prefer to not to organize a presentation, but to read my text. I feel comfortable so because I don't use to talk in English in my daily life, so I can avoid some mistakes. So I would like to inform you that my presentation today does not have any conflict of interest. My speech has been coordinated with Elda Businger, the president of Brazilian Society of Bioethics. These views and positions I will present here, the views and positions I will express here represent those of the Brazilian Society of Bioethics and do not generate any conflict of interest in relation to my own positions. I would also like to apologize for my limited speaking skills, which are not as strong as would like them to be. And additionally, my voice is not very good today due to a sore throat. Sorry for that. The Brazilian Society of Bioethics was founded in 1995 with a mission to promote ethical standards in research and healthcare. From its inception, the society has been deeply involved in addressing ethical issues in research, advocating for the responsible conduct of scientific studies, and ensuring the protection of human participants. Although bioethics emerged late in Brazil, dating from the late 1980s and early 1990s, during this period, bioethics was already present in Brazil, and some people were already working with bioethics, but there was not yet a convergence of these individuals. So the creation of a national entity was a significant milestone for the convergence of people with interests in bioethics and for its dissemination. It seems to have been important for the implementation and development of bioethics in Brazil that since the first administration, one of the main goals was to bring together all individuals from various fields of knowledge who were interested in bioethics. The society has played a pivotal role in fostering dialogue and collaboration among professionals from various fields, including medicine, philosophy, law, and social sciences, by organizing conferences, workshops, and educational activities. The Brazilian Society of Bioethics continues to contribute significantly to the advancement of bioethical standards in Brazil and beyond. The Brazilian Society of Bioethics actively participated in the improvement of research ethics in Brazil, especially in the process of revising Resolution Number 1, dated June 13, 1988, of the National Health Council. The revision process, which took place during the first Brazilian Congress of Bioethics, from June 26 to 28, 1996, and in several other meetings with this purpose, culminated in the presentation of Resolution Number 196, dated October 10th, 1996, of the National Health Council. This resolution created the Brazilian research ethics systems, namely the Research Ethics Committees and the National Research Ethics Commission, known as the SEP-CONEP system. The history of research ethics in Brazil is a narrative of progressive development influenced by both national and international contexts, and which was initiated in 1988. The framework of ethical research in Brazil has evolved considerably over the past few decades, with significant milestones marking its growth. In the mid-second half of the last century, Brazil, like many other countries, had limited formal structures for research ethics. Ethical considerations were often handled on an ad hoc basis, relying on the discretion of individual researchers and institutions. However, as scientific research expanded, the need for more systematic oversight became evident. The global awareness of ethical standards in research was significantly influenced by historical events, such as the Nuremberg trials and the subsequent Declaration of Helsinki, which emphasized the need for ethical principles in medical research involving human participants. These international milestones resonated within the Brazilian scientific community, prompting discussions and actions toward more formalized ethical guidelines. A pivotal moment in Brazil's history of research ethics came in 1996 with the publication of Resolution Number 196 by the National Health Council. This resolution laid the foundation for ethical standards in research involving human participants in Brazil. It outlined the need for informed consent, the protection of vulnerable populations, and the establishment of institutional review boards, known in Brazil as research ethics committees. Following Resolution number 196, Brazil continued to refine its ethical guidelines. The establishment of the National Commission for Research Ethics further strengthened the oversight of research ethics. National Commission for Research Ethics plays a crucial role in coordinating the activities of research ethics committees across the country and ensuring compliance with national and international ethical standards. In 2012, resolution number 466 replaced resolution number 196, providing updated guidelines that reflect the evolving landscape of research ethics. This resolution takes into consideration other international documents on research ethics and human rights, such as Nuremberg Code from 1947, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1948, the Declaration of Helsinki adopted in 1964 and its versions from 1975, 1983, 1989, 1996, and 2000, the International Pact regarding economic, social, and cultural rights from 1966, the International Pact regarding civil and political laws from 1966, the Universal Declaration regarding human genome and human rights from 1997, the International Declaration regarding human genes data from 2003, and the Universal Declaration regarding bioethics and human rights from 2005. Brazil continues to evolve its research ethics landscape, responding to new challenges and advancements in science and technology. The country is committed to ensuring the ethical considerations keep pace with scientific progress, safeguarding the rights and well-being of research participants. The history of research ethics in Brazil is marked by significant progress and commitment to upholding the highest ethical standards. Through continuous refinement of guidelines and the establishment of robust oversight mechanisms, Brazil has developed a comprehensive framework that ensures that ethical conduct of research involving human participants. It is true, not everything is rosy in the development of research ethics in Brazil. Recently, the National Congress approved a law on research ethics, namely Law number 14,874, dated May 28, 2024, which will come into effect in 2 days. Since the inception of research in Brazil in 1988, 36 years ago, much has been done for the development of bioethics and research ethics in Brazil. And the instances of social control have played a prominent role. Social control presupposes the effective participation of society, not only in overseeing the application of public resources, but also in the formulation and monitoring of policy implementation. However, there are attempts to interfere to minimize the role of social control. This is the case with the new research ethics law approved in Brazil, namely law number 14,874, May 28, 2024, which provides for research involving human beings and establishes the national system of ethics in research with human beings. The problem here is that Brazil already has a national system of research ethics, namely the SEP-CONEP system, which the mentioned law does not even mention. The National Research Ethics Commission and the National Health Council have responsibilities to ensure the protection of participants in clinical research. In this sense, the changes proposed by the mentioned law may remove autonomy from the National Research Ethics Commission, weaken the security of research participants, and favor commercial interests without considering ethical aspects. In the national and international scenario of clinical research, as pointed out in Clinical Research Action Plan in Brazil, Brazil has the potential to attract clinical research due to its large and diverse population, the existence of a public health system, which facilitates patient recruitment and follow-up, the high incidence of the most prevalent diseases, and in developed countries, the existence of ethical research standards compatible with other countries, qualified professionals, and a good infrastructures of hospitals and reference centers for phase 3 clinical trials. Thus, it can be observed that Brazil is an important destination for multi-center clinical research due to its mixed race population with great genetic diversity. This characteristic is important for phase 3 studies, as the objective of this phase is to test the drug or vaccine on the largest number of people with different characteristics to analyze its efficacy and possible variables. Phase 3 studies are often portrayed as the gold standard in clinical research. Yet, a clinical examination reveals that many of these trials functions less as genuine scientific inquiries and more as a service to the global pharmaceutical industry. Rather than being driven by a quest for new knowledge or the desire to address significant public health needs, these studies frequently prioritize the commercial interests of pharmaceutical companies. This is evident in the design and conduct of many phase 3 trials, which are often tailored to meet regulatory requirements and market demands rather than to answer essential scientific questions. The focus on large-scale, multi-center trials also reflects a tendency to produce data that supports market approval rather than advancing medical science. Consequently, the integrity of the research process is compromised as these studies become tools for profit generation rather than true endeavors in scientific discovery. The blurring of the line between research and service provision undermines the credibility of the entire clinical trial process, calling into question the validity of the findings and their contribution to the broader scientific community. Returning to the context of research in Brazil, the process of conducting a clinical study begins currently with the approval of the research protocol by the SEP-CONEP system. The system operates independently of the federal government to protect the rights of research participants, always guided by ethical values. The system is also an international reference due to the comprehensiveness and robustness of its regulations. It's worth noting that the SEP-CONEP system performs the ethical analysis of research protocols involving human participation. The National Health Surveillance Agency is responsible for authorizing experimental drugs for use in research and operates with different timelines from the SEP-CONEP system. It is undeniable that there is a need for greater investment in clinical research. However, this development should not occur to the detriment of research participants. As stipulated in the Clinical Research Action Plan in Brazil, all actions presented on ethical regulations have been executed by the National Research Ethics Commission with the aim of improving the system and everyone involved. This demonstrates that the ethical regulation sector of clinical research in Brazil is constantly striving to improve itself to contribute to the development of clinical research in the country. Moreover, it's also concerned with protecting and maintaining the guarantees for research participants that have been secured since the creation of the SAP-CONEP system in 1996. Increasing the volume of clinical research in Brazil is unattainable among the growing weakening of research ethics guidelines. Robust and unwavering ethical standards are the cornerstone of credible and humane research practice. As such, any erosion of these standards undermines not only the integrity of research, but also the trust and safety of its participants. It is imperative to thoroughly qualify researchers in the ethics of human being research. Without a deep understanding and commitment to ethical principles, researchers may inadvertently cause harm or fail to protect the rights and well-being of participants. Comprehensive ethics training ensure that researchers are equipped to navigate the complex moral landscape of clinical studies, balancing scientific advancement with the respect and dignity owed to each participant. Moreover, clear communication about rights and guarantees is crucial for research participants in experimental trials. Participants must be fully informed of their rights, the nature of the study, potential risks, and the measures in place to protect them. This transparency fosters trust and empowers participants, allowing them to make informed decisions about their involvement. Furthermore, the provision of post-trial access to treatment is a critical ethical consideration, particularly for chronic diseases. Recent legislative proposals to limit this obligation undermine the ethical responsibility of researchers and sponsors to continue providing effective treatments discovered during trials. Such changes threaten to reduce participant trust and could deter individuals from participating in future research, thereby stifling scientific progress. Investing in the development of clinical research in Brazil also necessitates adequate infrastructure and funding. This includes ensuring that research facilities are well equipped and that there is sufficient financial support for both the operational aspects of trials and the long-term follow-up of participants. Finally, fostering a culture of ethical research requires continuous oversight and public engagement. Independent bodies such as SAP-CONEP system must remain vigilant and autonomous, ensuring that all research complies with ethical standards. Public awareness campaigns can also play a role in educating potential participants about their rights and the importance of ethical standards in research. In conclusion, the potential for expanding clinical research in Brazil hinges on maintaining and strengthening ethical guidelines, providing comprehensive ethics education for researchers, ensuring transparent communication with participants, and investing in robust research infrastructure. Only through such measures can Brazil emerge as a leader in ethical clinical research, attracting global partnership and contributing significantly to medical advancement. Thank you for your attention, and I apologize once again for my voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very important presentation, and your voice and speaking is very clear and also very important talk. And I think I learned much from the Brazilian system of CONEP, and it is very some kind of critical situation is introduced by Diego, but I think that next presentation from Professor Greco will be possible to connect these Brazilian situation, how it is related to the issue of the Declaration of Helsinki, because Brazil is a very strong position to protect the ethics and human participants. This system is a very critical situation, and we are worried very much about it very much. And there are some kind of commercialization problem and also north-south issues as presented by Professor Dai. So it will be very important discussion. So if there's no any specific question or opinion, so we'd like to go to the Professor Greco's presentation. Is it okay? So thank you very much, Diego, for your very
Thank you.
important presentation. So next, so please, Professor Greco, this is the last lecture of today's session, and there would be very important response from Peter Lully and Sarai, very much involved in this kind of issues. So please start, Professor Greco, your presentation. Is it possible for you to share? Okay, thank you very much. So please start. So unmute, please.
Okay. Thank you very much
Also,
again.
there is no slide. Okay, slide.
It should be there.
Ah,
I can see the slides.
okay. In my
Yes.
okay, everyone can see.
Can you see them? Yes, I think so. Yes, thanks very much.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yes, we can see them.
Okay. Thanks again for the people that already talked. I think it's going to be a way of complementing and maybe sharing with you the views. And I let me put it on the big screen. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the name of my presentation: Ethics of Placebo-Controlled Trials and Post-Trial Access. And of course, my feeling all these years is that international health research should be a stepping stone to universal public health access. I think I may be naive saying that discussing clinical trial is much easier than discussing universal public health access, but that's our way of doing things. I declare no current or potential conflict of interest. Those are my opinions. And I'm a physician with an infectious disease and bioethics. That's my professorship in the University of Minas Gerais in Brazil. The ethics of placebo has many documents, and I think I just missed one of them here because I didn't put the one that Ames discussed a lot, was the CIOMS 2021. But of course, I will say a little bit about that. But so there's some documents. Of course, I'm going to focus on the 2000 Declaration of Helsinki, getting to today that is still the 2013 document. many documents, and it has been said, and I have a small difference on what Aim said, because this is a UNESCO, that's a very important declaration, that's from 2005, and I like the declaration by itself because it's very concise and gets to most parts of ethics that we need to know. But in Article 15, I think it should be improved. And the reason I'm going to show to you now. It says that the benefits should be shared. But then it says benefits may take any of the following forms. So maybe people can choose. Instead of providing therapeutic modality, they can just access to health quality, to special assistance, access to technological knowledge, or the other forms of benefit consistent. I don't think there should be any. It may take the following forms. So maybe we could stress the need for provision. That's what we're fighting for in the Declaration of Helsinki. Post-trial access. And not only for the research subjects, but to all. So that's my first criticism, maybe the only criticism I have of the UNESCO document. The second one that was mentioned more than once is the Sion's 2016. It says again, it's not very strict about what it means, because it says addressing participants' health needs requires at least that research and sponsors make plans for. I think that's very permissive. They don't have to make plans, they have to ensure. So that may be another discussion that I had the discussion while I was taking part of this document, but there was a consensus that should be make plans would be the best that we could get at that time. Providing continued access to that have demonstrated significant benefit. Again, post-trial access. But making plans, I don't think it's enough. And another thing that can be a criticism is say that when access is provided after the research, the provision may end as soon as the study intervention is made available through the local public health system or after a predetermined period of time that the sponsors, researchers, and community members have agreed before the start of a trial. Then again, we need to make sure that community members are emancipated enough not to agree with certain things that are started within the research. So participation should be part of the whole project. And the general considerations, it's very interesting. Now I think it's very interesting in the Sion because they say that participants may continue to need the care. And this is based on the principle of beneficency, in the principle of reciprocity, and the obligation of care for participants is not limited to research in countries with limited resources, but it's a universal ethical requirement in research. And many people at that time said that maybe that would be an undue influence. And the conclusion of a working group is that even though the provision during and after the trial may be an incentive for people, it shouldn't be considered an undue influence. And I agree completely with that. But it's very interesting because there were many other documents that we don't even mention them. And one of them is shown here. Is UNAIDS WHO Guidance Document 2007. It has a guidance point, care and treatment. It said at that time, and Peter Lurie remembers that participants who acquire HIV infection during the conduct of biomedical HIV prevention should be provided access to treatment regimens from among those internationally recognized as optimal. At that time, people would say that no, they should receive just what they have. And so it's very clear in the commentary, there's a consensus that the sponsors, that's again, I want to stress that, the sponsors need to ensure access, not the governments, not researchers, not the population. Sponsors, because that's clinical trials that we're talking about. And there's also agreement that prevention trials should contribute constructively for the sustainable provision of care and treatment after the completion of trial. Was a very strong document Unfortunately, it was changed in 2019. It's a little bit more permissive than this one. Now I'm going to go straight to what my plan of talking. In 2008, in Seoul, South Korea, there was the first change in the Declaration of Helsinki after the 2000. That was a very strong declaration. And at that time, the position from the Brazilian Medical Association, Brazilian Medical Council together was that we should keep what was written in the Declaration of Helsinki 2000. Every patient entered into the study must be assured of access to the best proven prophylactic, diagnostic, and therapeutic methods identified by the study. What happened is that from 2008 to 2013 was a washing down of what was required. Because then again, it's written that before the start of a clinical trial, sponsors, researchers in the host country should make provisions for all that need intervention. Who should make, again, is not must. They should make provisions. Doesn't mean that they should ensure post-trial access. That was the big change in 2013, and unfortunately, it's going to be the same because the 2024 working group draft, the last one, says exactly the same thing in a different wording. Must be arranged, and again, by sponsors of research to be provided by themselves, healthcare systems or host country government for all participants. Is much worse, because then you are sharing responsibility for something that most of the time, when we say clinical trial, unfortunately, most of the time we're saying about phase 3 clinical trials imported to other countries. And that's exactly what I'm going to say in the end. And it has one thing that we, Chieko and myself and many other people, we criticize on that. Acceptance requirement must be approved by research ethics committee. So it sends to the research ethics committee the responsibility of doing something that it should be already included when you start proposing research. So that's one bad thing about what's going to happen in Helsinki in October. For the placebo, was the same. We decided in 2008 at Seoul, was a very big discussion, to propose that to keep the same as the Declaration of Helsinki 2000. That is, the benefits, risks, burdens, and effectiveness of a new method should be tested against those of the best current method, except in the following circumstances. The use of placebo or no treatment is acceptable in studies where no proven method exists. That seems to be so clear, so nice to do. But then in 2008, this proposal was defeated, and in 2013, it came all the changes. It says that where for compelling and scientific sound methodological reasons, the use of any intervention, blah, 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 blah. And what's worse of that is that the patients who receive any intervention less effective than the best proven, or no intervention will be subject to no additional risks of serious or irreversible harm. I think that's awful, because you can do anything. Not if you don't get to the point where the risks are serious or irreversible, you can use anything in a clinical trial without using placebo. And of course, there was a big discussion at that time, that was in 2008. They included what I put here in bold: extreme care must be taken to avoid abuse of this option. That is so childish. It's not something to be in a declaration. I mean, it has to be more direct. And unfortunately, it's exactly the same that's going to be. Exactly, maybe a little bit changed, but it's exactly the same principle that was in 2013, and they kept the additional risks and also the extreme care. So that's the position that we have now. It's going to be discussed. Almost certainly it's going to be approved as written. Now I want to go back to what Diego said. What's the position of countries? Because as I said in my question to Barbara, the Declaration of Helsinki is not binding. It's something that's good, was very important when it was started, but has been getting worse time and time again. What happened to Brazil? Brazil responded to these pressures in a very interesting way, because what we did, and that's the Brazilian Research Ethics Commission, we did was almost exactly took out what was in the 2000 declaration and decided to be our directives. And I'm going to read it for you. In biomedical research, when using placebo, such use shall be fully justified. And it has to be compared, all the trials has to be compared to the best current prophylactic diagnostic therapeutic methods. So there's no way of using placebo when there's a comparator, an active comparator. And second, that I think is even more important, at the end of the study, the sponsors must ensure to all participants access free of charge and for all needed time to the best prophylactic, diagnostic, and treatment that have demonstrated to be efficacious. And this success will be warranted between the end of individual participation and the end of the study. In this specific situation, access will be permitted through study extension according to a consubstantiated analysis of participants attending physician. The decision that is from 2012 was based in a resolution in 2008, just before the meeting in Seoul, when we decided that would be the way that Brazil would act independently of what happened to the Declaration of Helsinki 2008. And that's a very interesting, because that makes a position, I'm not sure that's unique, but probably very few countries do like Brazil does. And it was very interesting because in 2010, we had already the Declaration of 2008. I was at CONEC, I was member. And people said, now they're not coming to Brazil anymore because they're going to have to give medication forever, paid by them. And what happened was that for Brazil, the big pharma had a special projects that included exactly what we asked. That was very interesting to say that we can do that if you have really a will and a will for getting all the protection on human rights and bioethics for everyone. And by the way, the Brazilian Medical Council Code of Medical Ethics is still valid, includes that physicians are forbidden to have any participation in clinical trials where placebo is used as a control when there are efficacious and effective drugs for the disease on trial. So we have two documents, one about the directives that were changed by the new law that Diego mentioned, and the second one that is for us physicians, the Brazilian Code of Ethics from the Brazilian Medical Council that we have to abide to it. I modified that from a very nice slide that Chico even presented today. The question that I asked it, how the proposed draft addresses issues? Does it follow the high standards? In my opinion, no. Because instead of even getting near the paragraph 8 of Sion's, they kept the way that they can do anything with placebo, short of maiming or getting a very serious disease for the participants? Or does it focus on minimum requirements, utilitarian, pragmatic? Exactly that. They kept it, including in the post-trial access, because it says must be arranged. That's a very interesting and lax verb in English, by sponsors and researchers to be provided, not only by themselves, but by healthcare system or host country governments. We published a lot of things about that. It's there on the book that Chico mentioned to you before. And I used this very nice table from Chico also that has some points that I think are very important. Many of them should not be negotiable. And I'll start with the first one that I think is very, very important. Amos stressed that to social value. What does that mean? It means that the research is not ethical if it does not have social value. That's a very important point, because if we really follow that, maybe I don't say most, but many of these phase 3 trials would not have any way of progressing, because most of them do not have social value. And they're repeating trials, me-too drugs, and things like that. So to keep social value as a strong stance. And in my opinion, I think Declaration of Helsinki took it out because of that. The second point, there are many points here that are very important, and I put here what Brazil does. We do completely strong social value, benefit sharing, the avoidance of discrimination, and the best proven risk minimization, comparative arms, and post-trial access to everyone. So we are very close. In some things, we are close to Sion, but we're very close to the patient group that had a presentation August 5th. I think that's a way of strongly advocating for us to have a better way of dealing with research ethics, with clinical trials, on the participants and people rights. Yeah, I just said about that already here too. In social value, I think the three most important, not the most important, but very important points are the social, best proven, and post-trial access. But one thing that I keep repeating this slide because that's from a very important philosopher from Italy, 1964, when he wrote Fundamentals of Human Rights, he had this phrase, this sentence: the gravest problem of our times in relation to human rights is not anymore to set its foundations, but to protect them. I think that's our way of seeing it. There's so many documents. People could pick up what they want. No, I like the United States project that's pragmatic. No, I like the one that's coming from Europe or from Brazil, from South Africa. That's the problem, because what we have to do is protect not the directives, but the human rights. And I like very much what he says. I put it in Japanese. I think Shieko corrected me because I presented that in Japan also. And the conclusions. I think in my opinion, there's a time to globalize ethical requirements. And unfortunately, I'm going to read one by one. It's a very busy slide. It's not the best way to show, but I think they are important for the end of my talk. Research with human subjects must be scientifically sound and have social value. I have spoken about that 3 minutes ago. Clinical trials with these objectives can be performed where vulnerability is low. If you do in a place where vulnerability is low and the results are good, you are supposed to ensure that to everywhere. International ethical guidelines are necessary. I'm not against that. I like everything that happened in the world arena with the guidelines that we have. But in my opinion, they should be harmonized and approved by world representative institutions, such as the United Nations, WHO, UNESCO. Of course, UNESCO has already a document. Because this, especially when we think about UNESCO Declaration, was approved by 199 countries. It's different from WMA, that's a World Medical Association that has medical associations throughout the world, but it represents only physicians. In clinical trials, access to best proven preventive, diagnostic, and therapeutic must be provided without any double standards. That's a very nice fight. Ruth Macklin has a book on that. I think it's very interesting that if you want to read it. Participants have the right to post-trial access to drug, vaccine, or procedure that shows to be safe and effective. Placebo can be used when there's no known comparator. And another problem that I think we have to stress on that, I put in bold. If ethical standards are lowered, it will certainly be difficult to eventually raise them. The Declaration of Helsinki, for example, was very strict, very strong in 2000. And then it came washing down, being more permissive, and getting to 2024, keeping the same way that they did in 2008, going completely against what was written in 2000. And another thing that I think is incredibly important is that all researchers, both from developed and developing countries, should participate in all stages of the study, from protocol development to the application of the results. And participants' representatives should also participate in the same way, from protocol development to the application of results. So that's an important point. We have to make sure that the people can say, and I say that many times, what we've been talking here, we're talking from the top to the down. Top of us, researchers from standards that are much above what's normal in our countries, and we're talking for the participants. It's very nice that we're together with them.
Excuse myself for a couple minutes, Lenny.
Sorry. But I think the way that could start is that when they decide that their participation is indispensable, but I'm going to say a little bit more in the end. What are the other conclusions that we can say? Discussion, in my opinion, that's a discussion on access to care and treatment and research, in my opinion, is outdated. And the debates on participants' rights to post-trial access must be substituted with an objective of providing access to all efficacious products of research in public health. Ames mentioned that in the SDGs. I think it's part of this. Universal access to current established and future research products must be international sanctioned. I'm repeating what I said. And I say, and repeat it again, the status quo of inequality must not be an immutable fact. And we must fight for universal access to health, which is recognized as a human right and not as an economic commodity. And last but not least, we must be prepared. I think Barbara mentioned about that too, for upcoming ethical challenges and to provide guidance for the expected difficult decisions related to new pandemics. We're facing another one just now, and to technological progress, risks, inequality, access, costs. Artificial intelligence is just one of them. And I'm going to just finish ending. I don't know how it's my time now. It's 25 minutes. 3 examples of access in public health. The first one is UNESCO. Even in that Article 15, they are not very strict. It's very nice when they say about social responsibility and health. That's saying about access in public health. Promotion of health for their people is a central purpose of governance and at all sectors of society share. Taking into account enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being without distinction of race, religion, political belief, economic or social condition. But progress in science and technology should advance access to everything, especially for health of women and children, because health is essential to life itself and must consider it to be a social and human good. That's the same as I said before. The second one is one that many people do not have access to that. It's the guidance on ethics of TB prevention, care, and control from WHO. And they have considerations that are particularly important in designing an ethical research strategy. Research should be designed so that the population which carry out stand to benefits. Research results should lead to technological transfer. We have not said about that yet. Because many times, and when we look, and Ames and myself, we have been discussing a lot, when the COVID vaccine was being produced or tried to be produced elsewhere instead of just produced in the North, technological transfer should be a right, not just as a given. No, I'm going to permit you to do something. No, this should be a part of the discussion. And my point of view, that's not for here to discuss, is that the TRIPS agreement should be completely redesigned. But maybe we have a time for discussing that sometimes. And the research protocol should provide attention how findings will be translated in public health policy. That's a UN document, WHO document for care, access to care. And the last one is a Brazilian example. Our constitution from 1988, the Article 196, says explicit that health is a right of all and a duty of the state, and shall be guaranteed by means of social and economic policies aimed at reducing the risk of illness or other hazards, and a universal and equal access to actions and service for its promotion, protection, and recovery. This gave rise to the Brazilian Universal Health System, known as SUS, covering 210 million people in the country. Everyone has the right to be treated, to access the national universal health system. The thing that countries in the North do not have. That was a difference if you compare what Brazil did with HIV/AIDS since the beginning, and what the United States, for instance, has a lot of people do not have access to any public health. I finish with this. I'd like to show also one quotation. Thucydides in the Peloponnesian Wars wrote that justice will come only when those who are not subjected to injustice are as indignant as those who are. I think that us. I am indignant, but I'm not affected by the injustice. It's nice that I'm indignant. But in my opinion, justice will prevail when those affected and indignant by injustice are able to fight for their rights. The first one, you can say that's empowerment. We are empowering people. That's not true. No one empowers anyone. The second one is Paulo Freire's emancipation. People must emancipate to fight for their rights. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for your very strong and lecture and with very much extensive analysis. I think it is a very extremely good opportunity to request for responding comments from Dr. Peter Lully as well as Dr. Sarai. They are very much involved in this kind of situation and actions. And lastly, 10 minutes for each. And lastly, Barbara will be able to have some closing comment before leaving because she has to leave within 30 minutes. So if there's any other specific questions or a very important question and a discussion, we can extend the closing time. But anyway, so I would like to request for comment from two commentators and additionally from Barbara. So thank you very much for Professor Greco. So please, Peter Lilly, give your comments.
Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. And thank you, Chieko, especially for inviting me and getting me back involved in this issue, which I'm looking at my calendar tells me I first got involved in over a quarter of a century ago, which seems impossible. And so attending a meeting like this after a quarter of a century is, on the one hand, quite saddening. In that it seems as if very much the same issues are being debated that were being debated 25 years ago, that the consensus in favor of human rights has still not been reached. On the other hand, it's encouraging in that we have a whole new generation of people who have, picked up the ball and run with it. I'm thinking especially of Doctors Greco, Kurihara, and Dai, who have done such wonderful work keeping this issue going and advocating best they can in front of the WMA. I want to emphasize that the issue may be old, but the issue is still current. Dr. Dai gave an interesting example about the pap smear study in India, which is fairly recent. But as hinted at occasionally by some of the other speakers, we did face this once more over COVID vaccines, in which WHO directive established the idea, or sought to establish the idea, that after there was a first effective COVID vaccine, that it would still be acceptable to test subsequent vaccines against placebo, in effect in countries that didn't have access to the first one. We actually did try and dig a little bit to find examples of companies that had taken advantage of this, and we did find one. But most of them actually were not of that character. By the time we found them, either the studies, were no longer recruiting, or they were simply in follow-up. So in the end, I'm not sure, and I'm happy to be contradicted on this, that actually happened to any significant degree. But the idea that the WHO went to the effort of opening up a new loophole, specifically in this new era of COVID, is very worrying. So this is an issue that is alive. It is as alive as it was 25 years ago. And eternal vigilance is all that will stop us from having the kind of language that people have been trying to insert into SIOMs and the Declaration of Helsinki for decades now. Now, as to the kind of rival versions of the language on placebo, and I'm going to focus on that only. As has been noticed several times in the course of this day, the Declaration of Helsinki at present argues for, quote, no increase of risk of serious or irreversible harm. I would look at that as a ceiling in terms of risk. It basically establishes a level above which you cannot go. And it almost invites one to engage in a degree of risk up to and until that ceiling. And that's worrying. Obviously, the definition of serious or irreversible harm is in the eye of the beholder. So I think that approach, especially this negative language, no increase, in effect will be less protective than the more positive language that is in the SEOMs, which I think can be thought of as a floor. So there, the language is minor increase above minimal risk. I think that establishes a floor of protection for human subjects. In my mind, at least, it creates an opportunity for some placebo-controlled trials that I wouldn't find troubling. For example, a study of an allergy medicine. I'm not personally troubled by the use of a placebo for something like that. Others on this call may differ. But the SEOMs allows for that, while at the same time creating a much clearer definition of what acceptable risk is, in part because it's a floor, but also because it uses positive language, not this negative language, no increase that you see in the Declaration of Helsinki. I was thinking a little bit when I was hearing all of these presentations about what might be an effective way to argue at the upcoming WMA meeting in a way that the people who actually control the WMA, which are mostly people from developed countries, will be able to hear. And I think that at least one way of doing this is by arguing that this point was made by a previous speaker, that there are inequities even within developed countries, that if the logic of the so-called local standard of care is to be applied, will ultimately be applied within those countries, and logically that could happen. And I just want to give one example that is a little bit been lost to time, but it illustrates this rather well. So I used to have a lot of involvement in what are called needle exchange programs, programs for drug users in which a used syringe is exchanged for a clean one. And at a certain point in time, every public health organization in the world, including WHO itself, had said that these were effective and should be part of any comprehensive package to prevent HIV among drug users and, by extension, their sex partners and their children. I was asked to be part of a study in, I want to say, about 1998, 1997, in which drug users in Anchorage, which is in the American state of Alaska, would have been randomized to either get a needle exchange program, or if they showed up at the needle exchange program but had not been randomized to it, they would have been given information about how to buy syringes at a pharmacy, something which on the one hand, as drug users, they already knew about, but on the other hand was illegal in Anchorage anyway. And so the idea was to randomize these two groups and establish once and for all whether needle exchange worked. We made the argument that there was a standard of care even within America and certainly internationally, that needle exchange programs were effective, and that withholding it, and in this case, literally blocking people at the door, right? Literally turning them away from the needle exchange that held the syringes that could save their lives and sending them elsewhere, which they may never do, was very much the same as the kinds of other examples that we'd encountered in the developing world. Interestingly, the way that they were establishing the effectiveness of this program, if it had ever really happened, which it didn't really in the end. But the project sort of died of its own inconsistencies. But there's not enough HIV up in Anchorage then or now to actually be able to measure the incidence of new infection. I pointed this out to the principal investigator, who said that they were going to measure hepatitis B infection instead, at which point I asked him if he'd ever heard of the vaccine. He said he had, but there was no real obligation to provide that either. And so when we filed a complaint with the National Institutes of Health, they ultimately mostly did not side with us. They thought that the trial was ethically designed, but very interestingly, the head of the National Institutes of Health at the time, Harold Varmus, turned around to the committee that had said that this whole study was fine and said, don't you think it's important that in an NIH-funded study that we have the highest possible standards? And with that, he ordered them to provide hepatitis B vaccine, which they didn't do very well, mind you, because they had a conflict of interest. But the point I want to make then, in addition to my point about this idea that this standard of care argument will eventually be used in countries, especially like the United States, where there are huge inequities even today, is that there ought to be an argument that the standards in research should not sink to what is provided as a standard of care in countries that don't have enough to provide the care that they would love to provide, but are unable to for financial reasons. Rather, research should be based on the highest aspirations that we have, and that if there's any artificiality within a clinical trial, it should be in favor of providing what science demands and not what, economics or the desires of researchers for data demand. So with that, I'll stop. Those are a couple of arguments that I'm sure you've heard before, Dirceo in particular, since you'll be there, Chieko. But I do think those are potentially ways to argue with the WMA when the time comes. But in the meantime, I'm just here to say how much I appreciate that you'll be there and that you're carrying the ball forward on this. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your very important comments. And Peter mentioned about the comparative study and the standard of care. It's very important analysis and program clarification. And next, I'd like to invite Sarai. I invited her because it is very important to bridge to younger generations, and she more involved in access issue, and it is not possible to solve the problems considering the improvement of the DOH in 1 or 2 years. So it may take 10 years for more better improvement of the DOH. So I would like to ask Sarai to have a presentation on your involvement of the research ethics, especially access in point of view. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you so much for this really interesting webinar. I've learned a lot. I'm very new to the topic. I'm not from an ethics background. So just to say something very shortly about myself and the organization I represent. So I'm a medicine student and a PhD student at the University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And I'm part of an organization called University Allied for Essential Medicines. And as mentioned, we take more access issues forward rather than anything to do with the Helsinki Declaration or clinical trials necessarily themselves. But I'll explain how I think that these two come together very much as well. So basically, the organization I'm part of started during the HIV/AIDS crisis, when it was seen that universities owned key patents on about 25% of the drugs needed to treat HIV/AIDS approved between 1988 and 2005. And what we saw is that universities in the US held these key patents and therefore had a key role to play also in ensuring access and affordability of these drugs. And based on this, we think that universities are a part of the solution of the access to medicines crisis, as we think that firstly, they should do medical innovation in the public interest, but that they also have a very important role to play in guarding downstream access to essential medicines. So when I focus very much on universities and how we can see that in the light of global health equity, I think the term that was mentioned earlier in the webinar about research equity is something that very much resonates also with us in our organization. As in the end, it's not just about the access to medicines, but it's also about what kind of research is done on what kind of diseases. Are we really studying the diseases with the greatest public health need? Where does the funding go at universities? Where on what terms is this research done? And there's also the issue of post-trial access that comes in. And then for us, most importantly, and that's what our organization normally really stands for, is how to share this research and on what terms. And so we mainly focus on equitable technology transfer by universities. So if I summarize very shortly, what we do as an organization is we are just a bunch of very nerdy students that really focus down on the legal aspects of technology transfer and try to argue with their own university on what terms and conditions they do the technology transfer to the private sector. However, thinking about the Declaration of Helsinki and campaigning of examples of how we think that the Helsinki Declaration can be improved, we submitted a public consultation on this matter. And maybe some of these issues are quite obvious, but one of the things I haven't heard mentioned yet today is clear rules on a timeline of trial results reporting. So it's an ethical obligation that you share the results of any trial you do with the participants, but also with the world. And if we study whether universities actually do this, universities are actually way worse at reporting clinical trial results than many of the commercial entities that are sponsors of clinical trials. So as a campaigning example, we took action on this in the United Kingdom, where initially 29% of university clinical trial results for CTIMS were on the EU CTR, but after 3 years, we saw that this improved to 91% due to a concerted effort that also involved political commitment to follow up on this issue. And I think that the Helsinki Declaration could be improved by making a very clear rules on a timeline in which the trial results need to be reported. So this would mean, for example, a 12-month deadline for putting the results on a public register, which doesn't prevent from further publication. And this would be the same as the WHO joint statement of 2019. And I think it's very important that there is a clearer time frame for this and that would improve the declaration. Then suggestion 2, I kind of feel talking to clinical like ethics committees in the Netherlands, both on a higher level. So we have a central ethics committee that approves all human-based research, as well as the local ethics committees in the Netherlands, that they don't necessarily see a problem with approving new studies by the same researchers that previously violated, for example, the reporting requirement or any other of the Helsinki Declaration principles. They mentioned to us that they don't have time to look into a new application and the person who submitted it and really carefully examine their personal history with these kind of issues. Whereas I think that time should be created and there should be accountability, maybe not only from ethics committees, but also from sponsors or funders to only fund research by researchers that have not previously violated any of the principles of the Helsinki Declaration. Again, this kind of feels like a no-brainer, but it's not something that is either said in the declaration or that I've seen from practice that people actively do. And then the last one that I want to mention is post-trial access. We've talked a lot about this in this webinar, so I shall not waste your time talking about it more. But what I see as problematic is that it's now called post-trial study provisions, whereas the word access is so important in really saying what it is about. And if we know anything from our Access to Medicine's work, is that the accessibility, availability, and like also the timely access and affordability is really, really important. And so what we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic is that a lot of trials were run in South Africa and Brazil. And what are the implications of that for earlier access, affordable pricing, but also technology transfer? These are issues we talked about before in the webinar, but I just want to highlight that we engaged with a community of South African students at the University of Oxford who said, how is it possible that the University of Oxford has made this vaccine, then trialed it in South Africa, and we in Oxford, as South African students, we can access it, but our family members are not able to access it yet. And like these inequities in access should be really safeguarded. And I think that universities have a role to play there, as do the funders of this kind of research, to really think about that more thoroughly. So these are the three small points I wanted to contribute from our perspective.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation, and I'm very happy to hear that there is some impact of their activity on the clinical trial transparency, especially the university's practice. Thank you very much, and also their activity on access issue. So now that we are coming to the closing time, so we would like to ask for Barbara for your comment as a beginning of the closing. And then I will ask for if there is any other participants comment or questions. And if possible, I would like to request for Professor Dai's comment. And as a last occasion, I will ask Professor Greco for your comment. So please, first, please, Barbara, for your last comment.
Thank you, Diego. It's a tough. It's really tough to summarize all these wonderful discussions. Sad, but important. Some of them are sad. So my first point as a conclusion is that the Declaration of Helsinki is not changing in parallel to the current needs and scientific progress, plus ethical standards, and is still a document with less changes and high controversy at the moment. We somehow have no consensus on the social value, which is really sad. And we need to work on the social value so that this becomes more evident. We have not reached a point of agreement on equity. And again, we have to work on it. And we had several nice examples and proposals. Definitely, we need to erase the placebo issue. We have other matters that are much more important to work on. And there are some positive messages, of course, that are coming from this group, that there is passion, there are advocates, there are ideas that we can cultivate and promote. And I think we will agree with the top priorities of non-placebo use when alternatives exist. And I think the only valid reason to have a placebo is when there is no treatment, there is no intervention for the particular disease that the protocol is addressing. I cannot imagine that there are many areas without standard treatments or best proven, given the many drugs per therapeutic class. The unmet needs are usually rare diseases or very severe diseases, and there we have solutions. We go with the alternative ways. I also like to say that there is a high economization of medical research, which is another worrying sign. And I would say that indeed the 25 to 27% of current used medicines comes from university or public institutions. Primary research, discovery and research were done by universities and public institutions. So we have a hope there. The rest, the 75%, comes from the industry. The only way that we can probably revise the process of industry would be the health technology assessment bodies, that they also look into the societal aspects, not only to the scientific. They look at the societal aspects, they look at ethical aspects for citizens and patients. And by turning down the new drugs or therapies that come from studies with placebo controls or with lack of post-trial access, they could be a lesson learned for those who insist on this. Well, I think we have to work harder and keep our optimism and have strength to go further with what we believe in. Thank you, Checo.
Thank you very much. So if it is possible, Professor Dai and other commentator participant Diego and Elda, if possible, and if the participants have some opinion or questions, please raise your hand. And lastly, I will invite Professor Greco. So please, Professor Dai, have your comment.
Thank you so much. I just want to be very short on this and not repeat everything that's been said. But I think it's really, really important that we have safeguards to protect vulnerable people, persons, and populations and groups in all respects. So this protection of vulnerability applies in all respects, in post-trial access, in placebo, etc. Now, as I looked at your slides and the comparisons you had made, Checo, I asked myself whether what we see as the Declaration of Helsinki, the document where claims are made, that is it's the most important instrument with regard to participant protection, it's the most used instrument. I ask myself whether it's actually fit for purpose and whether it can continue making these claims. I have huge concerns about that. I think, in my opinion, the Declaration of Helsinki in its current form will definitely not facilitate implementing solidarity and international cooperation. And this, I think, is fundamental also when it comes to protecting research participants and access to healthcare. And therefore, it's not going to facilitate the quest. It's not going to be able to allow for that quest towards research equity and access and hence health equity for all globally. And I'll finish off there. Chieko. Thanks, Over.
Thank you very much for your very important message. So we have to think about for the future of research ethics principle, world, global and the standard. So as a last occasion, there is no raising hand from participants. So Diego or Eldad, do you have any comment? So if okay.
Yeah, maybe I could talk just I wish in the end of this encounter, and I would express this wish saying that maybe we could do this more, or who knows, in the future we could have better ethical guidelines so we can discuss more, approximate more our views and contribute with this debate. We know it's not a great consensus in the world, so we can sharing our positions, our views, and step by step improving this discussion. That's a wish to continue doing that. That's my final message.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We wish to continue, of course, and involving you. So as the last occasion, so if possible, Professor Musunga, give you a comment in your language, and Professor Greco will translate together with his last message. So how about Professor Musunga? Do you have some comment? Is that possible?
Elda, você quer comentar? Eu traduzo.
Dirceu? Oi? Me ouve?
Sim.
Ok, acho que nós temos um debate importante sobre esse assunto. A Sociedade Brasileira de Bioética, ela tem se posicionado, ela tem assumido um protagonismo no sentido de internamente fazer a sua missão de discussão desses assuntos, de trabalhar com essa questão, mas nós temos um problema grave no Brasil que vem se agravando, que é a nossa dificuldade de enfrentar o problema a partir das dificuldades com a sociedade médica, com o Conselho Federal de Medicina, e também com a força que nós vivemos hoje do ponto de vista da pressão da indústria farmacêutica no Brasil. Então, acho que é isso. Ok.
Was a long phrase, so she said that she was, of course, we were all very happy to participate, and this was a very important discussion. And she says, and that's completely important to underline, is that we're facing, especially in Brazil, two problems, maybe more than two, but Elder stressed two of them. One is exactly with the medical environment, the medical institutions. One of them, they are very close to WMA, but the worst of them is the medical council that went during the pandemic. I'm stressing a little bit more than the Elder mentioned, but I think for getting the whole, during the pandemic, they were against vaccinations, and they pushed for chloroquine and the ivermectin to treat COVID. And the second, that's very, very important, is the pressure from the pharmaceutical industry. And it's very interesting to stress that too, because for the approval of this new law, it was especially the pressure from the pharmaceutical industry to water down what Connect has accomplished in the 36 years. Ok, Elda, pode continuar.
Eu acho que era isso, Dirceu. Eu agradeço aí a posição que a Diego trouxe, uma posição que a gente construiu, que nós construímos juntos em termos da Sociedade Brasileira de Bioética, e esse texto vai ser depois publicado com detalhamento a partir do que nós estamos discutindo aqui. Muito obrigada.
He is saying that it was important to have Diego to explain and to reinforce what the Brazilian Society of Bioethics thinks about that. And what he presented is going to be expanded to be published soon, we hope. And she thanks everyone.
Thank you very much for your valuable comment at the last moment. So, just one question from Sarai, that whether there is some kind of post-trial access, some principle from WHO, and I assume that that would be the CIOMS is in collaboration with WHO, and you, Dr. Professor Greco, introduced some HIV-related or tuberculosis related document related to post-trial access. But I
So
would like
just to like rephrase my question, basically, I'm wondering
Okay.
how progressive do we think that the WMA can be on these topics, or should it come from a different kind of governing body rather than the WMA? That was my question, yes.
Yeah, so please answer, and in addition, your closing remarks.
Okay, well, yes, thank you, Shep. Thanks everyone that participated, that organized and stayed all this time, almost 3 hours of discussion. And in my opinion, these 2 seminars are very important to promote human rights, cultivate participation, and protect participants. Before getting to a difficult summary that's impossible in such a long, I want to comment on 3 things. I can start with the Sarai question about who should be our focus to change. I'm repeating what I said. WMA is a social club. It belongs to physicians. It includes all the medical associations of any country. I'm a physician in Brazil. I don't belong to the medical association because I don't want to. So in many places, that's the way it is. And so they represent a proportion, in some places, a big proportion of physicians. So my opinion is that a real document should come either from CIOMS WHO, from WHO, and from UNESCO, because that would be really a document that would represent us all. Even if it's not really binding, it's going to be much easier for us to protect and much more difficult to be changed. That's the first question. The second I want to mention is that what Peter mentioned, and it was very interesting because he mentioned the study on allergy drugs. When we discussed that in 2000 at the General Assembly of WHO, Robert, what was the name of the Robert? Chieko, not Levine, the other one. Robert, forgot his name. He was, Peter remembers him.
Temple.
Robert Temple, he used to use these examples to make sure that placebo could be used. He used the example of allergy drugs. You sneeze all your life, why not sneeze a little bit more? Or baldness. People are bald for a long time, so why not use placebo for a trial? That was not what we discussed, and Peter was very good in that. The bar that's now in WMA document is very high. So it's not a way of protecting anyone. The second thing is about exchange of needles. I don't know if Peter remembers. We had this problem in Brazil. It was a very interesting and definite definition from a mayor in a city of Santos, a big city on the coast of Brazil where a lot of HIV was happening. He decided to start distributing syringes, and he was almost arrested by the Public Justice Department because they said he was pushing drugs for the people. Finally, it was not like that, and what an example. I'm sure that Peter knows about that. There's a lot of publications from him. Unfortunately, we published a lot of things in Portuguese, but it was a very good, interesting thing. And Sarai mentioned about the question, what kind of research are done? I mentioned that too. I mean, without social value, maybe 75% of research that we see in clinical trial is not worth it. It's not going to help anyone besides the drug company. And that's very interesting to have Barbara here because she has a position, very strong position on that. That's different from what's happening in Brazil with the people that work for the drug companies. So that's the two things that I wanted to say. Now, the last thing, when we say that, for instance, that Brazil and South Africa should have early access to vaccines, I think it's a nice way of doing it one by one. But in my opinion, that's not going to change the problem because now we have a new drug that's being distributed for HIV. It's called cabotegravir. That's used every 2 months. The new one is lenacapavir. That's going to be used injectable for people living with HIV that will last for 6 months. It costs $40,000. So if we keep doing like that, I mean, the progress in science coming, but the cost is impossible. So the only way to do that is to discuss what really is a patent. How long should it last? Because if we use the TRIPS, Doha's opening, it's one by one country. And what is happening, Peter knows very much about that. When there are agreements between 2 countries, one from the north and one from the south, they are adding what they call the TRIPS plus, saying that they cannot use TRIPS. So that's my point of view. It's another fight. We have to keep fighting. Not me, not Shirko. Shirko is young. But as Peter said, there are many young people, Sarai and many other people that could keep this flag open for everyone. Now, going back to our webinar, I put some points that I think we should keep in mind and expand discussion. Of course, social value is the most difficult, because that means that we're going to touch exactly what farm industry is afraid of. How much of this clinical trials, and that's what I mentioned to Diego yesterday, when you say that Brazil is a very good place to research. In my opinion, my humble opinion, most of the research that comes to Brazil from the outside is not research. They need people to do the work. So we have good researchers, we have good places, we have a lot of people, but what they're doing is not research. They're just providing service to the big industry. So that's another discussion that we have to keep in mind in any publication that we do. For post-trial, I have mentioned many times, we have to aim at getting to access to all. Placebo, in my opinion, is a no subject. I remind again, Peter Lur's seminal publication, 1988, 89, I don't remember, on the use of placebo in many unethical studies in Africa and in Latin America for mother-to-child transmission of HIV. And Brazil has a very strong position, as I mentioned to you. You cannot use placebo when there's a comparator. And incredibly, and luckily, this was not changed in this new law. The new law is bad for everything, but they kept that. So even with the approval of this new law, placebo cannot be used. TRIPS agreement, I mentioned. And last but not least, I'm repeating myself, the Declaration of Helsinki is not binding. So it's nice that we participate, we have to be there. I respect everyone that's in the Declaration of Helsinki from WMA. We have discussed that many times together, but it's not binding. So what we have to do in our countries is to decide what we want. We want to follow something that now, if they approve the way it is not good, or should we do something that we can be proud of, respecting ourselves as researchers and respecting participants. The Brazilian position has been very clear all this year, and we still keep it. So thank you again. Thank you for everyone that participated. Thanks, Chieko, and everyone. Where is Takeo is there too. So we have very many discussions to get to this point, aims, of course, to get to this point, hoping that we're going to have a new book that's going to discuss again more strongly, more in depth, the Declaration of Helsinki, not itself, but what is going to happen if it's approved, how it's going to be the impact everywhere. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Check, back to you.
So thank you very much for your very meaningful closing talk. So now we will close the meeting. I can keep this Zoom room 5 or 10 minutes, but at this moment, official time for the webinar is closing. So thank you very much for everyone to participate. Thank you. See you again. Thank you very much. So if there is anyone who wish to talk unofficially, please.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to stay. If you can stay, we can talk a little bit. But if you're not, it's a kind of a long morning, and it's no. So we can do sometime else because it's almost 11:15 at night in Tokyo.
Yeah.
We talk sometime.
I would like to chat, but maybe the recording is still on. I don't know.
There is a recording.
Yes, no, but like I want to chat informally just to ask some questions, but the recording is still on. I don't know.
Yeah. I have to keep the recording because the only closing the Zoom room recording stop.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I did not know that. No, I have some questions. I still have to read the full chapter from A to Z and really get into it, but I found it a really interesting webinar and also a really interesting topic and very interesting chapter you sent me.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you have any perspectives on ways we can engage young people more with questions around these post-trial access things or about the Helsinki Declaration? Because around me, I find a lot of young researchers have to study it and it's obligatory to do a course in it, but then they forget immediately and they don't find it important. How do we get them to engage?
Yeah, so if there is Peter is still keeping, it's possible. Pete, I would like to ask Peter's opinion. So this very precious opportunity to talk with you.
Well, thanks for the question, Sarai. Yeah, listen, I don't really know the answer to it, except to say the following. When I was sort of listening to some of these presentations, I was kind of amazed that we're still having this conversation in the modern era in two ways. The first is I firmly believe that in about 10 or 15, 20 years, people are going to be able to look back at what happened in HIV in particular and realize it was a mistake. It usually takes about that long, 30, 40, 50 years before people are able to say, I made a mistake. That's how long it took, for people to understand, what happened, it was ultimately addressed in Nuremberg. It's how long it took for people to really come around at the Tuskegee study. It usually takes a while before people can have that distance. Often it requires some people to pass on. So on the one hand, I feel that time is a bit on our side here, and that history will judge this work well. The other is that it's clear that we live in a new era, and in that era, there's much more understanding and appreciation of diversity, equity, inclusion, and some of the idea that one could have a double standard of the kind that is being proposed is kind of remarkable in this day and age. It really is, because the tides of history are in the other direction. As countries become more multinational, for example, immigration increases, consciousness increases over all these dimensions, and it's amazing that people are still pushing this because it feels so outmoded, honestly. So I say that because I think that young people are capable of understanding this better than most. They're on board for the new diversity movements, the new consciousness of a race that wasn't there, say, 30, 40 years ago. They're on board for this. And for a medical student in particular, who is getting involved in the enterprise of medicine and sees an injustice of a kind as fundamental as this, It seems to me like there's opportunities for organizing there. And obviously, you're one of the people, Sarai, who has sort of caught the bug. I get that. But it seems to me that there's an audience out there that is willing to hear your message.
So thank you very much for your message. And I also, yeah, very much. Professor Greco, you're raising a hand.
I just want to add, Peter, before you go, is that, of course, it's extremely important that young people get involved. And I think the institution that Sarai now represents is very important everywhere, including in Brazil. We have a lot of discussion with them, especially related to patents. That's very important to do that everywhere. The second group that we have to put together, on the first seminar we spoke about that, is the participants groups. We have to help in a way that we can do so that they can be very strong voiced. I think it's more, Peter, than expecting people recognize the error. I think we have to make a way that people that have been affected by the error, they can say, look, you were wrong and we're going to change that. So maybe we can put three things together. The old people like us, the young people generation that's coming. In Brazil, it's more difficult because when you see we're graduating 40,000 doctors per year starting next year. Can you imagine all these people coming from very bad institutions and they're going to be in the market? The market is not in working, it's in market. But we have to discuss with them. And my hope, really my hope, is with the participants. I spoke about that with Chieko. We are going to put the people from Brazil in contact with the people from Japan and see if with the Brazilian Society of Bioethics, we can even get them on board of the society as members. That would be very interesting to do. Thanks again. I think it's too much for Chieko. Chieko should go back home to sleep, my opinion. Humble opinion.
Yes, thank you very much for your perspectives. This is very useful.
So thank you very much, and I would like to appreciate your activity. And the Declaration of Helsinki is not changed so much. However, the experience the change we experience is during these since the year of 2020, I collaborated with patient and the public group, and they expressed very strong opinions on the DOH, and that is stronger than us research ethics experts. And I think that the medical student will have more power because it is a very serious problem ahead of you, research ethics. So how you are going to develop the new intervention. So I learned much from your group about the clinical trial transparency, everything coming for your group. And so
I mean, it still seems to be quite a niche interest, but it like both the clinical trial transparency and the post-trial access, as also mentioned before, is just like if you come in new to the field, you're like, wait, how is this not resolved already? Like, how can this injustice exist in the first place?
Yeah.
But I'm a bit concerned with the ethical standards for all human research in the world being made by the WMA, which, if it's correct, what was mentioned earlier is kind of like a social club in some sense. Like, they don't represent all doctors everywhere, and they don't represent countries or all opinions everywhere. And I think it's quite dangerous to let them decide between them what the ethical standard should be. I think that a UN organization like the WHO should say that, not the WMA necessarily. Right? I mean,
yeah, exactly. That is opinion of Professor Greco.
No, that's completely my opinion. That you just stole it from me.
Yes, well, I learned from you. I just heard it from you.
I'm joking.
No, but seriously, like it makes me think because like it sounds very great. The World Medical Association sounds like, okay, those are people that represent medicine, but if you say they don't necessarily represent medicine, then it's a bit dangerous that that is the central document on which then all laws and ethics, etc., is based. And that makes me think that there should be a push more on a higher level of the WHO, that there should be a WHO ethical standard.
Yeah, that's very true. I agree completely. And I'm going to talk about that with aims that we both belong to the UNESCO International Bioethics Committee. I think that's of course it's going to be ventilated there in September. And maybe it's very bad that you want to be in Helsinki in October, but we're going to discuss that too. I think Sherpa Elda wants to say
Yeah,
something.
please.
Acho que é importante, nós estamos vivendo um momento muito especial no Brasil, um momento em que nós vemos a maioria dos médicos muito descompromissada, uma parcela significativa, muito descompromissada com qualquer questão de direitos e com qualquer questão que diga respeito à ciência, à ética, e isso é visível, né? A própria imprensa brasileira tem identificado esse retrocesso grande do ponto de vista da categoria médica no Brasil. Entretanto, é importante dizer que nós temos uma resistência, nós não estamos absolutamente desesperançados, nós temos uma grande resistência médica que começa a se movimentar, que estava, de uma certa forma, adormecida, ou pelo menos com manifestações pontuais, mas que agora começa a organizar um movimento de resistência que nós, da bioética, enxergamos, percebemos como uma esperança de conseguirmos discutir com essas pessoas a questão dos direitos das pessoas, dos pacientes. Então, pois não, eu desculpa, fala, eu esqueço.
Yes, it was a long talk, so if I don't capture everything, you tell me. She's saying that again, the Brazilian society shows a very difficult situation because a large percentage of the medical profession is completely outside this discussion. Not only outside, but sometimes they are even on the other side against anything that has to do with ethics and human rights. But luckily, we are not desperate because there is resistance, and the resistance just showed up recently when there was election for the Brazilian Medical Council. So about 25% of people voted against them. So that's the people that we have to come together. And of course, Elda, I think you agree with me, not only them, but also if we can talk to the medical students before they get too late in their profession. So that's what she said. I think I captured most of it, but if not, Elda can please continue and repeat. Elda?
Acho que há uma importante atuação da Sociedade Brasileira de Bioética, porque nós temos tentado fazer uma articulação forte com os programas de pós-graduação em bioética. No Brasil, nós temos apenas 3 programas, um da UNB, um no Rio de Janeiro e um no Paraná. Acho que a academia tem um papel importante, e essa articulação da academia com a Sociedade de Bioética, a Sociedade Brasileira de Bioética, ela me parece ter um potencial muito grande. Nós estamos organizando dando prosseguimento a um grande trabalho envolvendo grupos de pesquisa em bioética para que a gente possa fortalecer esses movimentos e capilarizar esse debate. Nós estamos também numa tentativa forte na América Latina desses encontros, desses grupos, mas nós estamos nesse momento reconhecendo a importância dessa parceria com vocês no Japão e dizendo que é uma esperança também vermos que o Brasil se articula com países, com outros países, não apenas da América Latina, e essa parceria com vocês nos parece muito virtuosa e também muito carregada de futuro, de possibilidade de outras ações para além dessa que nós estamos hoje.
That was too long too, but I'm going to start by the end. she's saying that it's very important that we keep this partnership, not only with Japan, but she mentioned, and it's very important in her time as a president of the Brazilian Society, to expand it internally with the research ethics groups that are getting many places in Brazil. We don't have many graduate courses in ethics, but we have a lot of people working in research ethics. So putting them together and expanding it to Latin America, that's another word. We have so many things to do. It's going to be a way of counteracting and, of course, discussing that with not only with the medical profession, but with the doctors to be that are coming in the next few years. Okay.
So thank you very much. And so if Peter is still remaining, you have some comment? Was the last moment?
No, I don't think so. I've just enjoyed listening to everybody, and it's been wonderful. Thank you for involving me.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very good opportunity to have a time with you.
Hope to see you soon, Peter. Not in Washington, D.C., because I don't like to travel there, but in Brazil, in Belo Horizonte, that I have never been.
No, I've never been there. It's on my list.
So hope to be able to have some kind of meeting in Brazil.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very nice place. I visited last year. Yeah, there was a regional meeting in São Paulo, and I was kidnapped by Professor Greco to Minas Gerais. That was a very good experience. Beautiful city.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. So see you again, and I wish to have another meeting with you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everybody.
Bye bye. I will closing.